And I spent my Thanksgivings and Christmases almost completely by myself. And that's when I realized I didn't have family or love. And it was always like this constant quest of like finding my family.
We love the San Gabriel Valley. There are some amazing people and businesses here, and we think they deserve the spotlight. Welcome to the SGV Master Key Podcast. We'll have on the people that make the SGV great. We'll find out what makes them tick, their ups and downs, their history, and we're going to have fun doing it. This is the SGV Master Key Podcast. And now your hosts, Scott Warmoth and Russell Mano.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the SGV Master Key Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, we bring you the people of the SGV and share their stories with you. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. And we are excited that we have another special guest for you today. And before we get started, just a reminder, we have partnered with San Gabriel Valley Now, your source for city news, announcements, events, special savings, and everything SGV. Check them out on Instagram, sgv.now, and read their new SGV Now magazine on their website, sgvnow.com. Well, Scott, we always have a little dialogue between us before we get started on the show. And, you know, today's guest has a connection to a place that you and I have a connection to, which is the park in Pasadena where we play basketball.
Yeah, I haven't been there for a while, and I need to get back. But It's been a great site for a lot of great games.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's actually video of us on YouTube playing against each other. But those were some really memorable times, and we had some pretty, you know, great battles there at the park.
That's right. And if one of us got injured, we'd shoot left-handed all game instead of right-handed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of good playing there, a lot of good times.
Sure. And, you know, I've recently started going back more frequently and enjoying that. And I meet several people there. And I think nothing replaces the human interaction, right? Like you can't really get to know someone online just on Facebook or Instagram. And it's really interesting the number of people that I've met there. And today's guest, I met him, I would say months ago, played with him a long time and just never, you know, broached that conversation of, you know, who is he? And I'm really glad that I did. And his name is Young Kim. He's the creative director of his company, 3DJ Productions. Young, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 3DJ Productions, what is that? What do you guys do?
So 3DJ Pictures actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is a production company, and we focus a lot on commercial, narrative, documentary, music video content. We kind of work we're founded by mostly below the line crew members. And I always said that like producers and directors is the highest paid entry level job. And a lot of the times producers and directors are solely focused on the outcome and not the process. And once you've been a crew member for a long time, you kind of understand the process more, and, you know, you're kind of more technical in your approach. And I wanted to bring that to a production company to make sure we're ticking off all the boxes in the process. And, you know, it's actually a relatively new company. I started it in March, but before that, I was just Young Kim Productions. And I actually did a test to see if my name was the reason why I wasn't getting as much work as I wanted. So I applied to a tech company under my name, Young Kim, and then another name, which was a white-sounding name, Aaron Vandegraff. It was like a guy I knew in high school. And Aaron Vandegraff got all the messages,
Seriously?
all the interview requests.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, guess I should change my company name. And
Wow.
that's what I did.
You know, and that's terrible. I mean, you grew up here. You're an American. I would imagine. I don't
Right.
know how you consider yourself. But,
Yeah.
Oh, that is just shocking. But it's what you hear all the time.
Yeah, but it's also a double-edged sword. You know, there's a lot of companies, too, that hire exclusively on the basis of race or creed or gender, you know, to fit their inclusion checkbox. You know?
Right. And it sounds to you like it's just something they're going through the motions on.
Right. I think it's an overcorrection for decades of
Right.
prejudice or whatever.
Going back to how we met, I think you can learn a lot about someone in how they approach a sport, right? And so I hate having to guard you. Like you're just so active, and so much effort in a game that is essentially meaningless, right? Like it's just a pickup game at the park. And so that's one thing I knew about you. And there's so much more to you, and I want to get into some of your story. But when you first gave me your number, you're from New York, right? So what was life there like for you growing up?
I mean, I kind of grew up all over the place. I was born in Arizona, and my family was jumping around continents, but I felt like I grew up in New York because that's when I was first truly on my own. I left my home when I was about 13 after going to a reform school, and I was forced to kind of just be my own person in New York. And without, anyone else telling me what to do, I had the most autonomy I've ever had, and it was tough. I made a lot of bad decisions. I became homeless for a stretch for a little bit. Was walking a lot, obviously, chain smoking, drinking, drugs.
You went on your own at age 13?
Yeah.
You left reform school at that time?
Yeah. Then kind of jumped into like 4 different high schools growing up.
New York City or?
Just all over, like New York, Washington State. I lived in LA for a little bit, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Where did you live in Washington State?
Port Angeles.
Oh yeah, I have a very close friend in Port Angeles.
Yeah, it's really close to Olympia.
The mountains.
Olympic National Park.
Yeah, Olympic National Park. Yeah. Really, Port Angeles. I mean, it's a small town at the very tip, the very northwest tip, really, of Washington. Really closer to Victoria than to any other city in Washington.
Very easy to jump over to the other side if things get bad.
Yeah, you just swim over to Vancouver Island.
Yeah, I would take that ferry a lot.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I figured I had motion sickness.
Wow. Yeah. No, well, that's interesting. I asked that just because I grew up in Seattle. That's my home, and so
a lot of my family's in Seattle too. I used to live in Federal Way, Auburn, Northgate, Belltown, that area of Seattle too. Like right after college. Yeah. Yeah,
that is all over the place.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wait, so you said after college, where did you go to school?
I went to NYU.
Film school?
Film school, the Tisch Film School. Graduated in 2011. Worked in the city for maybe a year. And then it got to a point where I just couldn't afford it. And I had to figure out another option. So I stayed with my aunt, who was in Seattle at the time. Found a job with a production company called PSG Films. They do reality TV. And they did the Alaska State Trooper show on National Geographic. Mm. So I would be the assistant editor, blurring out faces, license plates, logos, and stuff like that.
Is that what you call below the line?
Yeah.
Is that what you
line, yeah.
How you referenced it?
Like there's just basically just a line for like writers, producers, and actors who get residuals and all that stuff after the fact. But everyone else below the line just gets paid their flat fee or their hourly rate.
And do you feel that's the heart of production?
It is. I mean, it's kind of like, when the pandemic hit, we realized who the essential workers are. It's the people who are bagging groceries, the people who are delivering food and stuff like that. Without that, like, the world doesn't run. And the same thing goes with the film business. Like, without the people, doing the blood gags and holding the microphones and rolling the cameras, you can't make a movie.
There's a jump in that story from being on your own at 13 to going to NYU. How did you go from on your own at such a young age to getting to, go to college?
I had a lot of people that kind of helped me. One in particular was this man named Dale Campbell. He was a principal at a Mormon school, and he kind of became my father figure. I lived with him for a little bit until I started having a relationship with his daughter, and then he didn't like that. But he really taught me the power of thought, and he never punished me or criticized me with force or anger. It was always questions, and he really taught me to kind of ask a lot of questions when things weren't going my way. So from like 14 to like 17, 18. I just spent a lot of time with him. And
Where was that?
this was also in Washington, Kennewick. It was like Richland, Tri-Cities.
Yeah, the Tri-Cities.
Yeah.
Oh, so he was kind of a Socratic figure.
Yeah. It was my kind of, Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey. He was like the mentor. It taught me a lot.
Were you going to high school then in the Tri-Cities?
I was, yeah. And then I went to a different school in the middle of the year because that school lost funding, and then eventually went back my senior year.
And then you were able to qualify to get into NYU?
Yeah.
How did that happen? And
I
how
don't
did
know.
you think of NYU?
Honestly, I didn't know a lot of schools existed. I only knew about the Ivy League schools, and because my parents were all pressuring me about Yale, Harvard, and all that stuff. I even took a trip with my aunt to the East Coast to like visit some of these Ivy League schools. And I remember hating it. I remember going to Harvard, and we went to like some building, and I picked my nose and I put a booger on the wall, and I was like, I'm never coming to this place because I just didn't like the vibe or the energy. And then when I did the Common App, where you like apply to like a bunch of schools on one application, NYU was on there, and I was like, all right, well, I don't even know what the school is, but I need to like hit 5 so I can meet the minimum of this dollar amount of this application thing. And then all the Ivy League schools rejected me except Yale, and that was the school my dad really wanted me to go to, and I said, no, I can't. I don't want to. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to make movies. And he cut me off financially, and I decided to make movies. I got the acceptance letter via fax, which is funny.
Did you? So at the time you applied to NYU, you didn't know about their film school?
No, I didn't know about the school at all. Yeah,
Wow.
I didn't even know it existed.
Really?
Yeah,
Was that a grad school, film school, or was it
Undergrad.
all undergrad?
undergrad.
Yeah. But I mean, that's considered, if not the top, one of the 2 top
Right,
film schools in
right.
the
I
U.S.
had no idea. I was such a bubble,
Yeah.
through 18, 19 years of my life.
But you knew you wanted to do movies. You wanted to make movies.
Yeah, my aunt gave me a camcorder when I was in 3rd grade. It was like a JVC Panasonic camcorder with like a VHS tape that you put in.
Was it maroon?
It was, yeah. It was.
I think I had that one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And now make PowerPoint credits, using Microsoft Word. I went through each and every effect, swoop in, swoop out, ease in, ease out. Then I would take that camcorder and shoot the screen. It was, CRT back then, so it had the rolling bar. But that was my way of making opening credits. And then I would zoom in on a car that's outside, making sound effects with my mouth.
Wow. So it sounds like this was just a serendipity situation. I mean, you ended up studying what you really wanted to study, not knowing that that's what you were getting into.
Yeah, it was
And-
just the way to like escape the work. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't want to do
Wow.
law. I just want to make movies.
Oh, they wanted you to be a lawyer?
Yeah, but that my father wanted, because immigrant culture.
Yeah,
just
sure.
Be a lawyer,
Yeah.
be a doctor.
Right.
Do something that makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because our generation was specifically told that if you go to college, you'll be set for life. You don't have to worry about anything. Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So you didn't know you wanted to make movies, but now you're set on this is what you want to do, right? And do you have something in mind that you're looking to create?
Yeah, I have a couple projects. One is kind of like a family biography, so to speak. It actually has to do a lot with 80s Korea, as we were talking about earlier.
Really?
With the politicians out there.
Oh, wow.
I also have a story about a concert pianist who falls in love with the escort while tuning pianos at a jazz club. And then I've always been fascinated with ancient Egypt, and I've wanted to do a movie about Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs in ancient Egypt.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah.
He's got to meet Glenn.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
He's
Who's in the same
cinematographer.
profession as you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's shot for Jeff Corwin for I think 20 years. He's shot for Discovery Channel, History Channel.
Mm-hmm.
He loves going to ancient sites, looking at ancient artifacts. He's the only guest who's been on here 3 times to tell us about his adventures around the world.
That sounds awesome.
So it's, he was inspired by Indiana Jones. So just hearing you speak about ancient Egypt and that way, you two probably get along.
Yeah, that's all the places in the world. That's the number one place I want to go visit.
Really?
So I always am, I think this is just part of who I am, looking at what lights someone up, in whatever they do. And it doesn't even have to be them speaking. It can be presented in what they create. So I see you really enjoy basketball. And as you were describing just the little things that you were doing, you really lit up, learning these effects and trying these things out. Like what is it about creating movies that excites you?
That's a good question. I think because you can kind of tap into like the most extreme limits of humanity. You can also kind of be an anthropologist. You can be a documentarian. Whatever interests you, there's a subject for it all. And I think I'm a huge numbers pervert, is what my wife says. I just love putting spreadsheets together, trying effects in and out. It's just like an endless curiosity to filmmaking. There's so many ways to do it. There's not just one way. And I think that's what keeps me going, because there's this way that I haven't tried it yet. And whenever I get stuck on a project that I don't really enjoy editing, I try to find like a new style or a new trick I can learn. And then that usually gets me going again. Like, oh, okay, now I can have fun with this one more time.
So when you say new project, like I saw on your website, you have several highly recognizable names that you've done stuff with. So how much creative freedom do you have on those kinds of projects?
A lot of the corporate ones, you don't really have that much creative freedom in terms of the check boxes they want to hit. But in terms of like stylized like cuts or effects, they kind of give you a little bit of leeway. It's usually the more money involved in the project, the less creative freedom you have. And then the cheaper it is, sometimes you get to be a little bit more creative, which is nice. So the most projects I've had fun on were the free ones. The one there where I lost money making, basically.
Wow. And how do you find these projects? How do they find you?
When I first started, it was a lot of Craigslist. When I first moved to LA, I started working at a church in North Hollywood. Then I jumped over to a post-production house in Mid-Wilshire. And then I tried to organize a strike at that company because they were just treating people like garbage. And then they fired me. And then I had to just scour Craigslist all day just to look for like little jobs. And I got really lucky at the beginning of 2016. Me and my friend, Harris Khan, were at a coffee shop in West Hollywood trying to find more Craigslist gigs. And I found the gig that said, oh, we need a DIT/AC/camera operator/sound mixer. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. I applied. And maybe 20 minutes go by and an email comes back. And it's like, hey, are you available for an interview? And I was like, oh, yeah. Where is the office? They're like, oh, it's not an office. It's a house. And I was like, oh, great. This is a scam. It's either going to be a porn or they're going to harvest my organs or something. But I was curious. And they gave me the address. I went up the hills in like West Hollywood. And I come out. This director comes out and is like, oh, this is a magic show. I'm like, okay, maybe there's clowns or some weird stuff. And then they're like, well, we really like you. We're going to bring the magician out now. And out comes David Blaine.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, this is a thing. And he just goes, oh, I'm David. How long, when did you start working? And I was like 14. He's like, oh, cool. Can you start tomorrow? I was like, yeah. It's like, cool. And then we flew to Toronto the next day to the NBA All-Star game, and we shot that situation with Drake and Steph Curry and Dave Chappelle with the Frogs and all that. And then I worked for him for all the way up until November, met a bunch of celebrities, and I didn't get paid a lot, but it was just perfect for my kind of entrance into Hollywood. I felt like at that point I arrived. And then I joined the union after that, and then, just kept on going.
Were those shots where he was doing close-up magic in the locker room with the players?
Yeah, that was the one after with LeBron and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see those?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I think because they were freaking out of the stuff that he was doing.
Yeah.
right?
You shot all that?
Yeah, so I was the sound mixer and / camera operator on some events. There mostly was this guy named Matthew Akers. He was the director and DP. Really bright, talented guy, and I learned a lot from him. Yeah, I was doing sound mixing. I was offloading footage. I was taking care of frogs.
Really?
Shooting frogs.
Oh yeah, I do remember seeing the frogs, eating the frogs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so you got your big break in this, like, to get so close to all these celebrities by responding to a Craigslist ad.
Isn't that crazy? That's why I never count Craigslist out anymore, because things can happen.
Why would that kind of production, be putting an ad on Craigslist
Yeah.
I don't know.
versus like their own contacts or whatnot?
I think it has to do with, like, I don't know, maybe the sensitivity of the magic, NDAs and stuff like that. And also just being able to utilize a young gun and push them to their limits without worrying about breaking union laws or all that stuff. Because,
Oh.
technically you're supposed to be doing one role, but I was doing like 6 or 7.
I see.
But that was the turning point for you.
It was, yeah.
Once you did that, you had these contacts, you were a union member, things just came together.
Yeah.
And have you worked with David Blaine since then?
I did, I think, one thing in 2019 with him. I think it was just like some pickup shoots for the last special. And then he actually called me maybe about a week ago or 2 weeks ago because he's doing a show in Vegas. But I don't know. I don't want to live in Vegas for that long.
Oh, it would require moving there.
Not moving, but maybe just at least
Relocating
2-3
for a
months.
while.
Yeah. I mean, 2 days in Vegas, and I'm like, all right, time to go home.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into what else that springboarded you into, but we ask each guest to bring an item of significance. And I know you couldn't bring a physical item with you, but can you describe what it is that you would have brought?
I was actually going to bring my dog.
Oh, that
But-
would have been a first.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how the office would feel about it, so I kind of left her there.
What kind of dog do you have?
She is a pit bull / border collie, Australian shepherd, chow chow,
Wow.
golden retriever, everything. Yeah. The shelter found her in a box at a Walmart in a parking lot.
Oh, wow.
So I went to the shelter on a Valentine's Day with my wife to be like, oh, let's just look at puppies as a Valentine's Day gift. And she held that thing for like 20 minutes. She was like, oh, can we keep it? And I was just like, oh, all right, fine. And then it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
How long ago?
It's like 4 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah. February 2018. No, 2019, sorry.
Well, so you went to Valentine's Day with your wife with no intention of adopting an animal, just to go check it out?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
If I ever go to a shelter, it's so hard. If you just connect with one animal and the way that it looks at you and
Yeah.
that's tough.
I did not know.
So what happens next in your career for you after this, big break?
After that, I just started to jump on a lot of features, commercials, and I was just constantly shooting from 2019 up until the pandemic, really. And then when the pandemic hit, I just focused all on post-production because no one was shooting anything. So I work a lot with Live Nation. So they were just throwing me Zoom call footage with musicians or old concerts. And I would just recut a lot of that stuff together to keep, I don't know.
What do you specialize in? Do you like to work the camera or you like the overall production?
I do like the overall,
actually?
but as I've gotten older, I realized that I do like editing the most. I think not only because it is the final rewrite, it's really where you're directing the most, but also because you get to sit at home and just enjoy yourself and have some quiet space instead of a lot of chaotic things happening at once. Because it's like 14-hour days, and a lot of times on set, ambition kind of gets in the way of reality. And then when you have the footage, you're kind of forced to face the music. You have that shot or you're not. If you don't have it, figure it out. You can't just huff and puff your way into a shot like you can on set.
So you can sit in the studio, whether it's home or wherever, and just go through I'll call it the film. I know it's not film, but you go through the shoots and just edit. And who has the grand vision on the product?
If it's a narrative feature, I would say it's the director, but then sometimes the studio gets in the way. With commercials, it's a lot of it's 8 marketing people who are always giving notes at the last minute, and they're very vague all the time. Like, oh, can we make this shot more sexy? And you're like, I don't know what that means. I really don't. And then you have to translate that.
But if you're editing, do you have to work real closely with the director, assuming that's the person with the grand vision? Because it's got to be what he wants.
Right.
And then how much creative freedom do you have in doing your editing?
I think I have a lot more creative freedom than I think I do in the moment, because you're so focused on the feedback from the director that you're not really thinking about how you're achieving those outcomes. But I would say at the end of the day, it's like, usually if it's a narrative thing, the director's like right next to me, sipping on a Red Bull in the back and trying this, trying that, backseat editing. But when it's like corporate commercials and stuff, it's a lot of uploading to Frame.io or Vimeo, sending them a link, and then they send you pages of notes.
So at this point in your career, are you doing mostly editing now? Or
Yeah, I am. I still feel like I enjoy that part enough to do before I need to outsource it. Because we don't take on a lot of projects at once. We just kind of go project by project instead of having 6 different projects in a quarter.
Getting this, look into production and editing is really interesting. And I want to talk with you again about sort of this transformation of the person that you became, because that's also very interesting to me. We had a conversation yesterday, was, really different from whose team we're going to be on, right? Or, pass me the ball. But I was really fascinated with your own assessment of yourself. And I think the words that you said was, people have a hard time being honest with themselves, right? And really saying this is who I am, or so I don't even know how to segue into that, but you're so much more than what is just being presented here, right? You're so much more than just a person who is in this field. And I'd like to sort of talk about that. What sort of guided you into that way of thinking or looking at your life? Because you at 33, some people get into their later years and never consider really who they are, right? What are some of the things that have shaped that part of you?
I think finding love, and it sounds really cheesy to say, but once I married my wife, a lot of things settled down. Because before, I just was participating in a lot of different vices. John Steinbeck said in East of Eden, vices are attempted shortcuts to love, and I really believe that. And then during that time in my life, I was always thinking in absolutes. Am I good? Am I bad? Am I skinny, fat, rich, poor, whatever? I never learned to live in the middle. And my wife was the one that told me, if you're not 0, you're 10. You can be 4, 5, 6. You don't have to break your back.
So tell us about your wife.
Yeah, I met her in shooting a concert in Madison Square Garden. She was tagging along with the Korean team.
Is she Korean?
She is, yeah. We met in 2011, and we were always kind of friends for 6, 7 years. Whenever I worked in Hong Kong or Korea, I would visit her. And then 2017 in the fall, I told her, come visit. And we just hit it off really well, went to the Grand Canyon, all these national parks. I was just trying to show her the best parts of America, just maybe get her to fall in love with me or something like that. And I was desperate because I was I told myself, man, if I don't find love by the time I'm 40, I'm just going to call it, I was convinced that it wasn't for me. And she helped me quiet my soul a lot, because I was so amped up and aggro all the time. I always had a chip on my shoulder. But I think it was because I was trying to find love, my community, my tribe.
Your upbringing was a bit sort of chaotic, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2011, you were probably in your early 20s.
Yeah, I think I was exactly 20.
And you met her, but she lived in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So
because it was a K-pop concert happening. So she came with the Korean team. I was part of the American crew. And, she just came down the stairs at a hotel. And I was just like, oh, wow, she's hot. Mm. Maybe I'll marry her one day. And then I was like, nah, she's not going to pick me. So I just went on with my life,
But at that time, what kind of communication or contact did you have with her?
A lot of email.
Just as friends?
Just as friends. I would send her music. I would send her like movies, just little like poems here and there.
And so when did things change and become,
I think it
closer?
Changed when she visited in 2017. And then she went back for a year, or not a year, a couple months, and then decided to move back in February. But she never said I love you once during that stretch until we went to India together. And I was supposed to shoot a documentary there. And the Indian government gave her a visa pretty quickly. And the production company was lagging on getting me a visa. So they ended up photoshopping a visa. And then I couldn't get into actual India. I stayed in the Indian airport jail. I tried to cross the turnstiles and stuff, got butted in the chest by an Indian officer. And then we went to Korea after because we couldn't shoot anything. So I spent a month in Korea with her, met her mom, her brother. We just had a great time. But that was when she said, I love you for the first time, because she was concerned for my safety. I was sitting in the airport jail for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you speak Korean?
I do. Yeah. I talk a lot, and my Korean wasn't great when we first met, but because I just kept blabbing my mouth eventually.
Can you say something to Scott to test his Korean?
Oh, yeah. 안녕하세요. 만나서 반갑습니다.
So he said, hello, I'm happy to see you. Nice to meet you. Yeah. No, I know Korean, but my ability to speak it is not at its peak right now, because I lived in Korea, but and studied it. And, I can still read and write. It's, as you know, it's the easiest language in the world to read or write.
Yeah, there's no weird exceptions.
No. It's just, you just follow the rules. Yeah. But speaking is a bit harder. But
yeah,
I can understand. I can understand, and I could certainly come back and speak, with a little bit of, brushing up.
Yeah. If you ever play on the basketball court, we'll come up with.
And he also spoke. He spoke in a polite form too.
Right.
He used the polite form when he spoke to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get back into this transformation that happened, in your life with your wife and this whole journey. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
At Warmouth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
All right, we're back with Young. Young, before the break, you were sharing with us how your wife had spent this time with you in Korea, and Scott shared his understanding of Korean language. But I want to go back to something you said about seeking love or finding love in this transformation. And I came across in my own growth as an adult a definition of addiction. And I don't think I can repeat it clearly now, but it was sort of in those same along those same lines where the lack of connection to somebody in a young person's life is what they're trying to find later on. And some people find it in a bottle, some people find it through drugs, in other sorts of addictions, but they're seeking a connection to something that they should have had as a child. And having had people in my own life around me that have suffered with addiction, that made the most sense to me. Understanding their life, what they had gone through, seeing what they were missing in their life, that really made the most sense. What didn't make sense to me was that somebody was born with this, gene or something that made them addicted. So, when did you come to that realization for yourself that it was love that that sort of helped to change you from, with your wife?
I think there's a difference between lack and a difference between loss. Loss is something where you've had it before. It's in your hands, and sometimes it goes away, but you have memories to share, to like reimagine and kind of bring yourself up. And there's lack where it's gone. You've never had it. You don't even know what it feels like. And for me, I think it was always kind of a lack of love. And I spent a lot of time alone, and it was just something that I always was hungry for, because I would see it all the time. My college friends, high school friends would have, significant others, families that really cared about them. I didn't have an actual Thanksgiving until I was like 19. It was like with the Mormon family in the Upper West Side. And I spent my Thanksgivings and Christmases almost completely by myself. And that's when I realized I didn't have family or love. And it was always like this constant quest of like finding my family.
Where was your family?
Some of them were in Korea, some of them were in Washington State.
But you felt you were cut off.
I didn't have a relationship with them.
And reform school started when?
13.
Oh, you were in and out of reform school pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah.
And you had already been abandoned by your family, would you say?
No, I'd say I abandoned them. It was just a decision I had to make for my own quest and my identity. Am I who I really think I am?
But at age 13, you're still like just a child.
Yeah.
How were you able to? Well, you lived with families. You were still being shunted around.
No, the reform school had a boarding school, and I stayed there with my cousin at the time, because he also came from Japan to get reformed. And it turned out that principal, I'm not afraid of saying his name, Richard Lee, was an asshole. He would beat kids, force us to do unspeakable things, and lied.
Where was this school?
This was in a place called Edmonds, Washington.
Oh, Edmonds.
Yeah. It's like next to a car dealership.
Which Edmonds is like an idyllic city. I mean, a beautiful.
Yeah. I guess like the outskirts of it.
Linwood or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty industrial from what I remember.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was like all fobs that came.
Oh, really?
I was like the only American. And that was a time in my life where like I wasn't sure if I was Korean or American.
Right.
So I became extra Korean. I started smoking. I started picking up the language. I started to be as Korean as possible, to find love, to find acceptance. And then after that, I went to that Mormon school, kind of stayed Korean.
So the Mormon school in New York, Upper West Side?
Yeah. Or that was where I had that one Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay.
Yeah. But I got baptized in the Mormon church in Union Square. I'm not a practicing Mormon at all. It's, once I discovered more about the actual religion, I was like, yeah, it's not for me. But, I tried to be extra Korean there too. Like I would fake an accent, mess up my grammar, because that was the identity that they projected onto me.
Wow.
And that's when I was like, oh, if they like me as this exotic Korean dude, maybe I should continue this personality.
Well, it was probably a hip time to be Korean too, right?
It was until the Virginia Tech thing happened.
Right.
Yeah.
That was when, 2017?
No, I think that was 2006.
Oh, 2006.
Maybe.
That long
yeah.
ago.
What is that?
It was that
massacre.
mass shooting in Virginia Tech by a Korean guy named, I think his name is Cho Sung-hee. But
Probably 10 to 20 people were killed.
yeah, I don't remember the exact number.
I believe he shot them all.
Yeah. And he killed himself. He had like a whole video blog.
Wow.
But all the Mormons in that school, they're all WASPs, you know. Their immediate reaction was to come to me and be like, "Oh, you're Korean, so you must have all this repressed anger. I don't want you to shoot anybody. So how are you doing? You doing okay?" I was like, I don't even know this guy. Like, they just kind of put me in that box.
Well, I suppose that's happened all your life. I mean, even up until recently when you were sending out
Oh yeah.
under two names, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't look white. You're not white, which is why you don't look white, but you don't look like what has commonly been perceived as an American. And that's the problem that Asians have, isn't it? That's the heart of the racism, isn't it? But how do you look at yourself?
I think the weird thing about America is that we separate individuals by primary identities and secondary identities. And with primary identity, it's usually your race, your physical attributes, basically. Secondary is like how much money you make or what do you do for work. And I think for a lot of white America, they're allowed to be their secondary identity first and white second. Whereas for a lot of people of color or marginalized people, they have to be extremely exceptional in their secondary identities to be considered that first. Like the example I like to give is like Kobe. Nobody knows Kobe as a black guy who happens to play basketball. They think of him as a basketball god first, and then who happens to be black, who grew up in Italy / Lower Merion High School. Same with LeBron or like any of these exceptional people. Whereas like a guy who just is a dentist, can be put on a pedestal if he's white. And another example I like to give is Chris Rock's neighborhood. There's 8 black people in his neighborhood in Jersey. I think it's him. Like I think Jay-Z was one of them.
Mary J. Blige,
yeah, and a few others. But they're all like amazing at what they do. And then the rest of the people in the neighborhood
Could be a dentist.
is a dentist. Like, damn, what kind of dentist are you? But like it's just the reality of the idea that America is a meritocracy, I think is false. Sure, if you work hard enough, you can get a lot of things, but America is and always was a caste system since 1619. And that's a reality that I think we all have to face to accept and realize like that is an obstacle that's in our way before we get better.
So your wife is Korean and you have spent some time in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever lived there long term?
I think the most I lived there was like 6 months. I was like 15.
What kind of adjustment did you and her individually have to make? Because she grew up in a different culture than you did, and now you're sharing your life. But how have you had to adjust? How has she had to adjust? What was it like for her to come live in the U.S.?
Definitely hard for her. Every time we have an argument, I think about how hard it was for her to move halfway across the globe, learn a new country, or learn a new language, and find work. And every time I feel kind of, I'm doing more work than her in my head. And I think about that, and I'm like, okay, that's totally not true. But one, it's conflict resolution. She taught me to the adjustment I had after she came was envy, I think. She said something really interesting that kind of stuck with me. It was like, once you buy a house, what are you going to envy next? Like, I guess I do that. She lives in the middle, Americans kind of live in absolutes. Europeans live in the middle. I think just learning how to be in the middle, and then for her, learning how to push herself to her extremes. I think was the biggest adjustment in our marriage. I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, it's a very deep and, difficult question. I mean, the whole issue is, first, in a sense, it's not intermarriage, and in a sense it is, right? And, just the adjustments that a married couple has to make is big enough, but here you're married to somebody from, who grew up in a different country, just has different experiences. No, it's a deep, dive into something that we don't have time for, I guess.
Before we move on, I came across this proverb maybe 2 years ago, and it says, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt. And it's an African proverb. And it really stuck with me, more along the lines of love and relationship. Can someone offer you love if they don't first love themselves?
Right.
And so as a person who maybe has not experienced, as you say, the lack in your upbringing, do you find yourself able to love well in your adult life?
At first, it was tough because I always thought it would be easier to love myself if I could find someone to love me. And once I found that, I really had to kind of come to terms with a lot of the stuff I didn't like about myself and why I hated myself and why I didn't want to be around. Then I really had to do it kind of piecemeal. I treat myself as a kid, be forgiving. Started going to therapy. That helped a lot. And just kind of understanding objectively what things were happening in my childhood. And realizing that person is a different person than I am today. And one of the quotes I really love is by this archbishop named Randy H. Newman, and he said, "To live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often." And so I have to allow my younger self and forgive my younger self for the mistakes he made or, his successes and failures, and learn to love that person too. Because a lot of times we keep that childhood trauma and say it's us always. And I think humans are some of the most unforgiving people to ourselves, but we're completely forgiving to everyone else.
Yeah.
It's all power of thought. Like, I miss a layup in basketball, and I'm like, I get so focused on that layup and why I missed it, and I think about my form and all that stuff. And then someone else will come up to me like, "Oh man, that fadeaway like 2 plays ago was great," and I'm like, "Oh wait, oh yeah," it's whatever we fixate on, I guess.
Yeah. There's a definition of trauma from Peter Levine, who's I think it's from the book Waking the Tiger, and he says that trauma is what we hold on to in the absence of an empathetic witness. And I think of a child who is hurting and is looking for someone to look back into their eyes and say, "I see that you're hurting. I see your pain." And one of the more powerful things that my wife did to me was to share my own upbringing with her, and her to just sit with me and say, "Wow, that was really horrible what you experienced." And unlike anybody had ever said to me before. And that was that empathetic witness at a very, much older age that had really helped me to heal. So, if there's that for you, I wish that, you do have that empathetic witness to say, hey, that, whatever you went through was not right. And somehow you find healing in that.
Yeah.
Scott often says that too when he misses a layup, that he's an awful basketball player. Actually, no, it's more foul language coming out.
It's like, I hate it when I make a mistake.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be the most fundamental thing.
Exactly.
And that's what happens in life. Like, we up on the most fundamental things.
Oh, it's terrible.
He can, but he's beaten me several times one-on-one, and we play hard. Like, I have to play hard, like full out to beat him. I tell him I try to beat him 21-0. That's my goal every time.
Yeah.
Which you probably have done.
But he can just power me down, like, just dribble, like bully ball, and get the shot every time. He can do that every time, and I don't know why he doesn't do that every time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit boring, I guess, right? But, I mean, he can also shoot, though, too, so.
Boy.
Yeah.
Basketball is a great game, isn't it?
It is. It's very fun.
All us misfits can, really enjoy
Trying
it.
to figure it out. Yeah.
Well, we're going to transition now to, I know, one of our favorite subjects, which is food. And we were talking, Scott has lived in Korea, and you mentioned this dish, and I forget the name of it, but
Yukgaejang.
Yukgaejang, yeah. And you said it's a restaurant also, right? And
Yeah, so yukdaejang is like a combination of that dish, yukgaejang, and budae-jjigae. Budae-jjigae is like an army stew that, I think came up pre-Korean War, where people would just dig into trash cans and like make a stew out of it, cigarette butts, old Spam
man.
and stuff. It's just whatever you had to do to survive. So that tradition kind of carried on. And then this restaurant, it's in San Gabriel. I forget the cross street, but it's a fusion of those two dishes.
Spicy.
It's spicy.
Spicy. Just
salty,
red.
spicy.
Just red spice.
is there instant noodles in it?
There is.
Okay, so I think I've seen this on the Food Network or something.
Yeah.
Oh, in which dish? In
And the budae-jjigae.
Oh yeah, because I've never had that.
Oh, you would love it.
Yeah.
There's like instant noodles, sausage, Spam, mushrooms.
But I used to eat. I mean, I would go. I would just love to get yukgaejang, but I could not eat it today. I mean, it's just too spicy for me.
Oh yeah, it's
But-
really oily too.
But very oily. It's really just it really just has beef and I don't think not much more in
Yeah,
in
and then
it.
like some fern, I think.
Yeah,
Red
right.
fern.
We're going to move on to some other places that you enjoy in the San Gabriel Valley.
So, Young, what are what we call our SGV3? What are your three sort of highlights of the San Gabriel Valley or
So
places you like to go?
I moved here during the pandemic, so a lot of stuff was closed down, and I found this place called Chengdu Taste, and they have really good toothpick lamb.
Toothpick lamb.
Yeah.
What is toothpick lamb?
It's literally just lamb with a toothpick in it, like marinated. It's really, really good.
So I've seen the name. I don't know if I've been there. Is that on San Gabriel? Do you know?
It is, yeah.
Near across from what used to be the bowling alley. You may not know that old bowling alley. So I think that's what Las Tunas or
Yeah, Las Tunas. I think it's
Is
somewhere
it
around
Las
there.
Tunas?
Yeah.
Oh, it says it's on Valley.
It's like
Oh.
8 minutes from here, I think, right?
on Valley.
It's on Valley near Atlantic.
I wonder if there's another one.
Chengdu Taste.
Oh,
It's probably the one, yeah.
okay.
Okay,
Definitely should
Chengdu
go.
Taste Toothpick Lamb.
Toothpick lamb.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. I think that's a first, right?
Yeah, that's a first. We haven't had that. Okay, how about a second?
The other two are pretty boring. It's actually the park, Eaton Blanche Park.
Oh,
Okay.
Spent a lot of time there.
Do you live right in that
I
area?
live like 2 minutes from it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even 2 minutes. It's like a third of a mile
Yeah.
away from my house.
So for the listening audience, that's in East Pasadena on Del Mar, near San Gabriel, between San Gabriel and Rosemead, and that's the park that we're talking about that we play.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think that's boring. I mean, that has
No,
some
it-
significance to
Yeah,
all
a
of
lot
us
of
here.
meaning. Yeah.
Then the third one I would say is my driveway, because that's where I really kind of had a transformation. Everything was closed, obviously, but I was about 220 pounds, smoking a pack a day, drinking, just not in the best of health. And I was like, I'm going to get diabetes. I'm going to die if I don't do something about this. So I dropped down to like 170, quit smoking, quit drinking, and I'm in the best health of my life. And I wish I did it sooner, but I finally did it.
So it was a real transformation then.
Yeah, but most of the time I was doing that with friends, and I made a lot of meaningful connections with some friends in that garage, just working out and talking about life.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
How long ago was it that you had this epiphany?
I moved to that house in August of 2020, and then it was around August of 2021 is when I started kind of pushing it.
Oh, so over the past year.
Yeah.
And how much do you weigh now?
I'm at 190 now, so
170. You must have been quite slim.
yeah, I had no muscle. Yeah. So it was like a phase of like losing a bunch of muscle and fat, but now I'm trying to like gain that muscle back. Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
Well, congratulations. That's a hard thing to do, and to do it in a year is tough.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing else to do. So, yeah.
I mean, but also to give up the smoking and the drinking also, that's tough.
Yeah. Some of the hardest things I've had to do is quit smoking, and I'm so glad I can do it because now I can run full court without suffocating.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to try and convince Scott to come out.
Yeah.
Oh no, I would like to.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah.
Next time you're there.
Yeah.
Can't do it tonight, but yeah.
Maybe Friday.
Oh yeah, I'll be out of town.
Okay.
Actually, but yeah, maybe next week.
Maybe next Monday, because you'll be here on Monday.
Yeah,
and
right.
For the shoot, so we'll see. Because
yeah.
usually we go on Monday, right? People go on Monday nights. Well, Young, thank you so much for that look into the world of editing and production, but more so that look into your life and sort of the things that have shaped you and the things that that you value in your life. But how can the listener get a hold of you, and what's the name again of your company's website?
They can go to 3djpictures.com, or they can reach me at 323-499-6198. I have to take a pause for a second to make sure I don't get spam, but the number's on the website anyway, so whatever.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your story with us and our listeners.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Well, there you go. A look inside the life and the story behind one of our own San Gabriel Valley residents, Young Kim. Thanks again for tuning in and spending this time with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can find us on our website, www.sgvmasterkey.com, and email us at info@sgvmasterkey.com. And until next week, we'll see you then.
You've been listening to the SGV Master Key Podcast. Our passion is the small businesses and the people that make up the San Gabriel Valley, and it's our honor to have them on the show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure to like, rate, and review. The show is produced by Russell Mano, edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on the SGV Master Key Podcast.
Mother, no, kind of mother.